With the flood of Formula 1 games being released on consoles and PC platforms in the late 90s and early 2000s, there were so many different types of games and a massive variety to choose from. It was hard to really know which game you wanted to get involved with. Some were definitely better than others, in fairness they really well. There were some that had some really good qualities but were just slightly marred by some glitches or AI issues that would and could hamper the experience for many. But it's not to say that they're bad games. If you can deal with some of the quirks and gripes, you would definitely have a good solid experience. But there was just so many to choose from. Finding the one that you wanted to play the most, or what you would consider to be the favourite, was a hard challenge in itself. But with that being said, there was another game that was released in the year 2000 under the name of F1 Racing Championship that was released on a multitude of different consoles, from the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 even, because it was one of the earliest games to be released on that system. It was released on the Windows PC, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, even on the Sega Dreamcast. So this game was no stranger to finding a home on many consoles and even in people's living rooms. The game was developed by Ubisoft and would take a lot of inspiration, utilising many elements and characters, locations and stats from the 1999 Formula 1 World Championship season. But the game also faced steep competition from the very popular Grand Prix 3 that was released in and around that time on the PC, as that was considered one of the most authentic and true racing simulation experiences of its generation. And from the offset, when we look at the visual appeal of F1 Racing Championship, from the PlayStation perspective at least, visually it's a very good looking game. If anything, like from spending time playing the game, it's definitely one of the best looking and visually stunning games, or even Formula 1 game released on the system. Mind you, there is quite a few of them, in fairness to it, there is. But this is definitely hands down one of the better looking games. But in saying that, the visual qualities are slightly let down by some of the gameplay elements. While it does have good handling characteristics and physics, it is slightly let down with regards, even referring back to the game's reviews at the time, the AI presence in the game. As while it is challenging, one of the interesting aspects is that every time when you're trying to overtake an opponent, once they're in front of you, their instant reaction is to cut across you and try to do everything to stop you from passing. They'll weave in and out and they'll duck and dive. They will deliberately drive in front of you to stop you from getting past. The problem is that they do it so quickly that every single time it's almost impossible to avoid them, because as soon as you hit the grass, you'll end up going into a gravel trap and you instantly slow down. But the problem is that even when you do try to overtake them, and if you do manage to do it, you're always guaranteed to run into the back of them or just hit them, because they're always getting in your way. It's only until you're alongside of them that they will actually let you pass. If not, they're always trying to play bumper cars with you, trying to knock you off the road. So on the surface, at first, when you first play it, it seems like that's a realistic element and makes sense, but the longer into the game you get and the more time you put into it, that becomes a hindrance, and it becomes extremely frustrating because it happens all the time with every single opponent you try to overtake, regardless of the mode that you're in. Whether you're playing in the arcade mode or simulation mode, it's all the same. They are always trying to ditch you off the road at every opportunity, which is just annoying, and just, it will drive you insane. In fairness, it will. But aside from that, I still think it's a very good representation of a game on the PlayStation. It's one of the most graphically impressive racing games I've seen. Now, in fairness, looking back over the years, like, I'm mad into my racing games and I do enjoy the Formula 1 games, and like, I did play Formula 1 2000, which I did cover in a video previously. There'll be a link in the description. That was released by Electronic Arts. That was a good solid game. But my favourite Formula 1 games on the system have to be the very first two games from Psygnosis, with Formula 1 and Formula 1 97. For me, hands down, they are the best F1 games on the console. Now, people might disagree with that, and that's totally fine, but they're my personal favourites. And mainly the reason behind that, especially with the first game, is around the first time when I ever got to play the PlayStation, for the first time ever pretty much, I got to play games like Resident Evil, I got to play demos of Wipeout 2097, Destruction Derby, but in amongst those demos was one of Formula 1 where you got to drive around the Nürburgring. And I kid you not, for me, that was, out of all of the games, like, right, I consider Resident Evil to be my favourite game of all time, but that's a completely different genre, concept, and totally different story for a different video. But I could not believe what I was seeing with Formula 1, because it was the most authentic of any racing game that I'd ever played up to that point, because it felt like something you would see in real life. It felt like I was just watching Formula 1 on a Sunday afternoon on TV, which I used to do a lot growing up as a kid. Myself and all my brothers and my dad would all sit down and watch the Formula 1 on a Sunday while we were waiting to have our dinner. And to get to play it in a game that had that authentic feel with Murray Walker commentating, and you had the sound of the engines and everything was just incredible. Even for me today, it's still the best at that type to do that of any Formula 1 game I've ever played. So when I go to play all these other games, for me, some of them are really, really good, don't get me wrong, but they just don't capture that element that I got with that first original experience. But there's so many of them out there that in many cases, the likes of Formula 1, the likes of F1 Racing Championship, don't get me wrong, I had plenty of opportunities to buy this game because it was everywhere. When you go into game stores, it was on the shelves everywhere, and it wasn't just for the PlayStation, like I said, the Dreamcast and Nintendo 64, it was being heavily promoted. Even with the PC, there was ample opportunities to buy the game. The problem is because I had so many games at the time and I had limited money, because I was always usually wanting to buy a certain type of game or something different, buying Formula 1 games wasn't always my main priority, because I knew if I went and bought a game like this, I would have very little or no money to buy anything that I really did want. So it always kind of got overlooked. But in saying that, at least now these days with emulation and also by being able to buy copies of these games online, we now can access these games as and when we want to, which is really cool. And in saying that, having spent time sitting down and playing this game, it is a good solid experience. My only major gripe is with the AI features with the opponents, as that will drive you crazy. But other than that, I think it's genuinely a good solid experience, and definitely one of the better looking F1 titles on the system. In general, there's a good sense of speed. The car details are really, really good. Even the environments, very bright, vibrant, colourful. It really suits the whole visual style the game's going for. But aside from the glitches, it's the only thing that's holding it back, and it could have been one of the best experiences on the console if not for that. But regardless, there's so many other games in the same category that you can choose from. You can really have your pick. There's so many different experiences to be had, and there really is something there for everybody, in fairness to it. But I genuinely think that this is a good solid experience, regardless of its gripes and issues. And I would recommend that you give it a try. There's enough replay value, there's enough modes, even with the arcade mode. The simulation aspects are really good. It is a good solid experience all round, so I would recommend that you give it a try. Plus, if you enjoy Formula 1 games, there is no excuse, in fairness. But I would love to know your thoughts of F1 Racing Championship for the PlayStation. What did you think of it overall? Or did you have the game not just on the PlayStation? What other console or platform did you play the game or own the game on? So be sure to share it in the comments below. And if you would like to see more content around other Formula 1 style games that were released on the PlayStation, then you can check out the playlist here on screen to see more of those games in action. And as always, keep those gaming memories alive.